That's right. The masks are back. Welcome into the Loochador Podcast after the South Carolina victory for Texas A&M, and this is presented to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors. Enter for your chance to win a $10,000 Academy gift card plus SEC Championship game tickets just by signing into that Academy app. The ultimate SEC football sweepstakes runs from October the 8th to November the 18th. No purchase necessary. Odds depend on entries received. It ends again on November the 18th. You can find complete rules at academy.com/official-rules. He's Billy Liucci. I'm David Nuño, and
you see that elbow Fury threw last night?
I did. It didn't even phase Ngannou. Ngannou won the fight, by the way.
Yeah, he did. I watched the whole thing this morning. Actually, I didn't watch it live. Did you watch it live?
Yes, I did watch it
didn't.
live.
I watched it this morning, and everything I read about it was right. He won that fight.
Yep.
He didn't do a ton. It was actually really, like, if you take out the excitement. I didn't think it was even that. I thought it was okay.
For a celebrity fight, it was good.
Well, yeah, if you want it for a celebrity fight, to me, it's the best one of those I've seen by far. And
Connor's second.
But I don't. I might put Connor and Floyd first, actually.
But Ngannou had a chance to win.
That is true. I don't know what Fury looked. He's always fat. He looked twice as fat as ever. He clearly didn't train for it. But Ngannou, I don't know, the stance, the style,
the power.
He kept fighting off that Fury's jab. Fury couldn't find. He never got his feet right and comfortable. And I don't think that was because he said it was because of Russ. I think it was just the styles, the mesh of styles.
He actually said that in the post-fight interview. He said it was unorthodox. I didn't know how to break through.
Yeah.
I thought, and we'll talk about A&M football in a minute, but I thought that Ngannou looked tired the whole fight.
Yeah.
But I think this is how he fights. His mouth is always open.
Yeah, you know who was like that? You're tied into Aggie football? Myles Garrett was always like that.
Oh, okay.
Myles always had hands on his hips, and he always body language between plays looked tired.
Mm-hmm.
You stand there and kind of cross those legs when you're standing there.
Yeah.
You do, like all the things that athletes, football players in particular, because there's so much time between plays, look like when they're tired. Myles always presented that way. And then the ball would be snapped and he's 100 miles an hour. So, yeah, I thought the same thing, but he didn't fight like he was tired. Not really at all. It's interesting to talk about that because to me, I just thought that was really fascinating. We've all watched sports a long time. And for a guy that's never been in a traditional boxing match to knock down
the best heavyweight in the world,
heavyweight champ, or Lenny or whatever the hell they call it. Yeah, the best in the world for a pretty extended stretch. I mean, look, he needs to fight Usyk and Joshua or whatever. But I mean, the heavyweight champ and a bona fide proven one, not a guy in an era, when they had all those Russians in a row. It'd be like a guy coming in his first ever boxing match and knocking out or knocking down, like Lennox Lewis or Holyfield or something. So pretty impressive stuff. And
by the way,
not as impressive as Kansas beating Oklahoma yesterday. That was
impressive.
With their backup quarterback, by the way. And I know Bean has played a lot, but man, OU, I've thought they were kind of fraudulent all year. They were lucky to get by UCF. I think Texas is kind of fraudulent too. They lost to OU. They were lucky. Texas was lucky to get by U of H, who just lost 41-48-0 to Kansas State a week later. Both those teams atop the Big 12 they're kind of fraudulent, but Texas to me gets the big benefit of the doubt because they went into Tuscaloosa and beat Bama, which is still their only loss. Whereas OU to me, do you give them the benefit of the doubt because they beat Texas? I'm torn on this thing because without Quinn Ewers, I absolutely, even after yesterday, would still go OU in that game in a rematch that we all think is coming, but might not. Might not.
We'll find out Kansas State next week.
Yeah, well, also on OU's side of things, too. There's going to be some sneaky Big 12 team because they're not all playing each other that just kind of pops up at the end and has one loss. There could be a weird three-way tie now. Wouldn't that be something? So anyway, I don't know what sent me down. Oh, the upset that we almost saw in boxing, we did see in football.
By the way, can I say something about that last thing about the fight?
Yeah.
It just strengthens my opinion that if Fury would have fought any of those MMA guys in a street fight, he dies.
Oh, yeah.
He gets demolished.
Yeah.
That elbow did nothing to Ngannou. He's just like, whatever, let's go.
That was a good elbow.
Yeah.
That was a cheap shot right to the...
But I like Fury. All right.
I do too.
So it's interesting. I was doing the post-game show yesterday, Billy, and I had this vision of what I want Aggie football to look like because it hasn't looked that way in so long. And then I'm looking at Max Johnson's numbers, and I'm like, look, my eyeball test told me one thing, but the numbers actually paint a different story. This is not bad numbers. It felt like the offense wasn't very good. And yeah, I want to see more points, and I want to see them score in the second half. Yes, I'm not minimizing that.
Yeah.
But Max Johnson, 20 of 30, 249, and a touchdown. Pretty darn good numbers for a game that I thought was
Well, let's maybe look at it this way. It should have been 21 of 30 for like, what?
2 touchdowns.
255. What did he throw for? 240.
249. So
Should have been like 265,
Yep.
260, and 2 touchdowns, no picks.
And that would make it a couple more points, by the way, 4 more points.
Well, and that was with a really bad first quarter for, I would say for him in the offense, especially for the
28
offense.
total yards.
He was, right from the jump, he was under duress for a couple really horrendous missed blocks early in the game, and you got a bad punt from Constantino to start off, and you're going, oh man, same old stuff as we've been seeing. And that second quarter was really nice by Max, by A&M, by the offense, by the coaching staff, Jimbo, aggressive, the defense, of course. And that second quarter really defined the game. I know South Carolina hung around. It's kind of, and we talk about the second half offensive woes in a minute because they're still very real. And even if they call that a touchdown by Max, all it does is it just, instead of no touchdowns in 4 second halves, you have one. It doesn't change the topic.
Right.
But in that game yesterday, if they make the right call, which SEC, that's disgraceful. And I don't want to go too crazy. It didn't cost them a game, right? But I mean, how do you screw that call up?
It's clear.
It's the easiest call you will ever have to make on a replay review. And it wasn't the officials at the game. I understand that guy missing that call in real time.
Sure.
I was standing right on.
I didn't think it was a touchdown.
I didn't either. And I was standing right on that sideline. I didn't think it was. It was a great catch by Max, a great job of getting that foot down. I mean, it was a wide receiver level play by a 250-something pound tight end. It was really nice. But he didn't. You can't miss that in that situation when that's what the review's for, you jackasses. So for him to miss that blew my mind. For them to miss that at the SEC offices, the replay. But look, the reality when that play happened, I'm sitting there going, that was a big moment because second half of the third quarter, 28-10, watching that game and knowing how it was going, that game's over. At 28-10, that game's over. Just the way it was being played, you knew. 24-10, South Carolina gets the ball back if they go down and score, which they did, right? 24-17, we got us a ball game. And that was, I'm telling you, that 4 points that they took away from A&M was massive. Now, look, credit the Aggies for answering, and I know they couldn't punch it in. They kept having to settle for field goals. But the reality is the game, other than for a few minutes there when it was 24-17, from the end of the second quarter on, you just really, I'm the most pessimistic in game. Like, like last year LSU when they scored to cut it to like 15, I'm like, man, they went right down the field. Now there's like 3 minutes, it was 3 and out, punt, that's how my mind's always going. I truly never felt that way yesterday. I really didn't. I felt like, after that, those 2 late touchdowns at the end of the second quarter, I felt like A&M was winning that game. They were in control.
30-10 after the first quarter.
Yeah.
That tells you the story.
And I didn't like the way South Carolina in that third quarter drove right down there and scored. But I always had faith, like, if A&M was up 2 scores, that defense was going to get a seat. they were going to get the stops to win. And I thought the defense was good again. And the offense got better. They did what they needed to do against a not good SEC football team. I sit here last week and say Tennessee's a good, not great SEC football team. They had a big, nice, not big, but a nice win at Kentucky this weekend. That's a good football team. Again, not great. Alabama's a really good football team, not the typical Alabama great. But you lost to a couple of top tier in 2023 SEC football teams, conference games late in the game, and you stood toe-to-toe, and the games could have gone either way. Now, there's still losses, and they add up, and the more we watch Miami, you, on the flip side, have to say they lost to a Miami team that's not very good.
Yep.
And that's one, I'd say you wish you could get it back. I'm sure they'd rather have the Tennessee one back or Alabama. But when you're playing a team like South Carolina, Texas A&M, the thing we all feared that would have been a disaster is playing down to their level. Same thing with Arkansas, same thing with Auburn. And so when they've played the three type teams so far in the SEC that aren't on their level, where A&M would have to play down to their level, sure, they did in the second half against Arkansas. Sure, they did in the first quarter against South Carolina. But the reality is they've won all three of those games
over the totality of the game.
60 minutes.
Yeah.
They've handled business against the lower-end SEC teams. I think they should go out and do the same thing in a couple weeks against Mississippi State, and that's fine. We'll talk shortly about Ole Miss because the last two shots you have to play up, and I'm not saying A&M has to play up to beat Ole Miss, by the way. I think Ole Miss is beatable. A&M's going to have to play a really good, really clean football game to win.
They're going to have to play better than they played.
Shown that. They haven't shown that in a few weeks. I don't think that my mind changed yesterday to where I feel confident that, now they look ready to go play a clean game. Unfortunately, that wasn't enough to change that part.
Alabama level of play beats Ole Miss? The way you played against Alabama?
Well,
they were
a
bad in the second half.
question because it's like second half offense, no. First half offense, probably. Defense that whole game, yeah. Ole Miss, if you want to dive into it, let's make sure we come back to South Carolina. Here's my thoughts on Ole Miss. I love the fact that it's at 11 a.m. Let all those students go out in Oxford like I know they love to do. Let them get real drunk, really drunk. Maybe stay up all night, guys. Go straight to the Grove, then go to the game. 11 a.m. helps the road team always, especially in the SEC, especially as compared to a potential night game. And just not sitting around all day on the road on game day. I'm a big fan of get up, get ready, go play football for the visiting team. So that helps. Ole Miss, to me, people think, I've had a couple people go, man, they could score 50 on it. They're going to light us up for 50, aren't they? And I'm going, I know they did that to LSU. That was two teams that willingly engaged in a no defense track meet. It's almost like they just made a deal and said, hey, it's like two boxers. It's like, say, hey, let's just go in the center of the ring and slug it out.
Right.
See who gets knocked out. It was almost like they went and they entered into a contract with each other, say, let's just go light it up.
And just throw.
And it's not the case. That was LSU with a great offense and LSU with a terrible defense. That was that combination. Ole Miss offensively, the reality is they struggled to get to 30 against Tulane. They beat Arkansas, I think, 27-20 at home. They beat Auburn 28-21. They beat they lost to Bama, where they scored 14 points, 7 in each. They had one touchdown in each half in that one. I think A&M's defense is absolutely the equivalent of a Bama defense this year. We've seen enough football to say I think they're on the same level at least. If Bama's that much better because they're a little stronger, they are stronger in the secondary, then fine. But it's negligible, the difference. And when Ole Miss played a defense like that, they scored 14 points. Now it's on the road. They're playing at home. my point is, because it's Lane Kiffin, everyone assumes like bombs away, they light up the scoreboard. That through X number, they're 8-7-1 through 8 games this year. That has not been the case generally in SEC play.
Are they better than Tennessee?
I think Ole Miss and Tennessee would be a great game. Just like A&M and Tennessee. I wouldn't call that a great game. We watched the Aggies lose, and I also thought it was sloppy on both sides. But, I mean, I think Tennessee Ole Miss is a 4-quarter football game. And I don't know. I think the home team wins that game either time. And I think that's the same thing with A&M and Tennessee. I think that's the same thing with a lot of these level teams. So, no, look, A&M can go win that game Saturday. In order to do it, they're going to have to look different offensively, particularly up front. And what I mean is, you can't leave points on the board. You have to let Ole Miss leave points on the board because Lane Kiffin will do that. He did that 2 years ago in Oxford. It's the only reason A&M was in that game. Because Lane, remember, Matt Corral, and they were going up and down the field early. It was one of the rare times, that Mike Elko defense didn't have answers. Now, they made a great second half adjustment, and they were great of stuffing them inside the red zone, but they should have been stuffed inside the red zone and kicked field goals. And that game probably is out of reach at halftime. Instead, Lane got, so he's going to do that. So on the flip side, A&M has to capitalize on scoring chances. And unfortunately, that's what we haven't seen. And that's why I can't be bullish on their chances this weekend. But I know that football team can beat that football team. But that offense is going to have to play better than what we've seen. And the hard part is saying they're going to have to play better than what we've seen for the last 4 weeks.
So I was talking to Coach Waddell yesterday, Alan Waddell, former A&M linebackers coach. We were just chit-chatting, and he said, David, people keep telling me that A&M needs to make halftime adjustments. It's not halftime adjustments. It's third quarter adjustments because they're going into halftime with the lead. Right? The only time they didn't have the lead was the Miami game. Other than that, they've been leading in all of these games. And those teams are making the adjustments in the third quarter. That's where A&M has to counter. And that's what I think could be a storyline heading into Ole Miss. How do they adjust if they have the lead? They've played with the lead. Why not? How do they make that adjustments mid third quarter? Not earlier.
The it's like I always say, like the adjustment to the adjustment.
Right.
And look, Ole Miss, this will be the best defense they've played this year, or second best.
Yep.
I mean, it's one of the two best. And like I said, when they played the best, they scored 14. I'd be shocked if A&M went into Oxford and held Ole Miss to that point total. But the point is, it shouldn't come easy for them offensively. The scoreboard should be such a game that if the A&M offense shows up and performs, I think it should be a 4-quarter football game where it's anybody's game. That's my expectation level. But again, it's a big if offensively, and the biggest if to me is it centers around the blocking. And I know, like, there's a lot, like you can break down Max's play, you can break down Jimbo and Petrino and the play calling, you can, the schemes, is there enough motion, is there, all of these things, is there enough quick game? My answers to both of those would be like, no, I don't feel like there is. Is it, but, are there plays where Max holds on to it too long? Yeah. I mean, some of those are their slow developing plays. Some of those it's on him. But my thing is he shell shocked too from all the hits? Like early, to me, the game he had yesterday, I give him a ton of credit.
Heck yeah.
Because he got pounded early on in that game to where his mental clock had to be like completely screwed up. We're like, okay, I'm going to catch this snap, and they're coming.
He got sacked 3 times on that second drive. They made some adjustments. I know he still got hit. He didn't get sacked again.
Yeah, it was a rough early start for the offense, but particularly up front. I thought they looked better when Dewberry went in there at guard. Give him credit for he seemed to settle things down. Crown over at tackle. I think right now, obviously, I think Naboo. I think Bryce Foster's struggling. I thought there was a play real early that was clearly on him that led to Max almost getting killed, and then Basantis as a true freshman. They've got to get those guys get in their heads and get them past that. But I thought Dewberry settled things.
I'm sorry to cut you off. Is it normal that they rotate so much?
No, I don't think that's normal. But I also think that they're seeing some problems and they're looking for answers. Yeah, and then also, with Fathery not being available, when you're looking over there at right tackle, I do think it's important to get crown over reps because you could need it like that. But I think it's more, David. I think it's more that they're trying to see it's not optimal. I don't love it at all, but
there's no rhythm with that.
But it's like if they were all playing really good, you probably wouldn't do that. I think it's kind of a mess up there. We all know that up front, and
it's been a mess.
They got it, but they did settle down. South Carolina, they did. I thought up front they did a nice job in the first half against Bama and Tennessee. A really nice job in the first half against Arkansas, and a nice job in the second half against Auburn. So it's like we see them play, decent football for stretches in these league games, but it's not typically. It hasn't been something they can sustain over 4 quarters. Saturday it was something they weren't able to do from the start, and then they kind of got their feet under them a little bit because even in the second half when they weren't scoring. I mean, I'm trying to look right now at some of these drives we saw, and where are they at? You can keep talking. Okay. These second half drives, I'd like to see them because upon watching it live, I was feeling like.
Well, let me read you these numbers, okay? Yeah. So first quarter, total yards, 28. The second quarter, where they scored 21, 139. I know we didn't see a lot of points in the second half, but 167 yards in the third quarter, 187 in the second half completely. So 20 more yards in the second half as opposed to the first half of the game.
Look, in the second half, too, they 13-play 75-yard drive, 8-play 69-yard drive, and then a 7-play 36 where you missed a field goal. They were moving. I'm not going to overhype that. They weren't but they were moving the ball in the second half of that game. That's why I'm saying it reminded me a little more of Arkansas than it did Bama and Tennessee, where they didn't score touchdowns. Because this one, they were at least moving the ball. And look, they answered South Carolina scores with drives, and that's always important, and especially when you're playing with a lead. So offensively, I thought they were okay. After the first quarter, they had a solid game against a bad defensive team. They did what they had to do against South Carolina. They beat them by 2 scores. The spread was 14. They won by 13. They missed a late field goal to cover. That's what you do at home to SEC teams that you need to beat, and they did that. And I look, does it change my outlook for the remaining few games? No, it didn't. There was still enough out there that wasn't good to go, man, I still don't necessarily feel differently, but they needed to win. They needed a feel-good win. I think that was more than enough. They should have walked off the field feeling good about that performance. Look, you won an SEC game by 2 scores. This is not one of those South Carolina teams that was like a few years ago where you could sleepwalk and score 60 on them. This is a team that, with a good quarterback, this is a team with a really good receiver, and this is a team that came into the season with high hopes after beating Tennessee and Clemson last year to end it. So this is not like a dog South Carolina team, even though their record's dog. They're competitive, and they were competitive yesterday, but A&M was just better. And that's where the game should have gone from the start. It's how it did go after the rocky first 3 possessions or so. And they handled business. It was a handle business Saturday, but it didn't change to where I was like, damn, they looked really good. They used that bye week. It all looks like it's come together.
It didn't, yeah.
But I think that would have been fool's gold anyway. I think this is a team that's just going to, if they're going to do something of note, like go beat I don't know what Ole Miss is ranked today as we record this, but if they're going to go beat a top 12, if not top 10, I guess they moved up at least one spot because they might have moved up. Who knows what OU will do, but they certainly will move up over Washington State, who lost late last night to Arizona. So top 11, top 10, number 10 or 11 Ole Miss team. if you're going to do something like that, I think it's just going to kind of happen where we're going to be sitting here the next Sunday going, where was that offense?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's and it maybe not. Maybe they win, 27-24, 30 to 27, and it's not great offense, but that's how they're going to win. It's not going to be that they scored 50 yesterday, and we go, man, if they could do that against Ole Miss and LSU, they're going to go up and down the field on them too. So I don't know what they could have done yesterday to make me feel a whole lot better. I think just today we would have been, man, that was a really impressive showing. As it stood, I thought it was a solid SEC football game you played. Yeah. You went out and you handled up on a team that's struggling. And by the way, you broke a 2-game losing streak. They needed that badly. We know how badly. We know what this conversation would have been like had they lost that game. Because I know everybody, including me and you and everybody else, were sitting there thinking it when they're down 7-0 and they're going for it on 4th down. Yeah. That was the fascinating part of this game to me in the early going.
Well, I'm telling you, Billy, during the first quarter, I'm like, what did they do during the bye week? That was the
quarterback sneaks, and I hate that it took
big smile from Olin there.
Yeah, I hate that it took. And I like the back and forth with Olin and Jimbo at the end of that. You heard that?
No, I didn't hear it.
About the what was it? I forget what it was. Oh, was it 3? Oh, the Rangers. The Rangers back.
I didn't hear what it.
They had some good banter. It was funny. But I'm looking at when A&M comes out and they go for it right off the rip there.
We asked for them to be aggressive. That's what that was.
Twice in the early going, they went for 4th downs, and I just magically run the quarterback sneak. I hate that it was a week late because who knows? You get that one against Tennessee, maybe you go up 17-7. Yep. But I thought the mindset was right. I still go back. And I agree with these end-of-half things. With the A&M offense against the opponents they were playing in those situations, I'm like, I think you're playing with fire to think that offense is going to go 70 yards, set up a field goal for a kicker that from range has been very shaky. I'm like, take your lead. Take your lead, get the ball in Knoxville. Take your lead. Yesterday was different. They were going to get a lot better field position with the lead.
Yep.
And he stuck with what he said, kind of his philosophy. But he kind of explained that.
What did South Carolina do? They tried to score on A&M late with about a minute 40 left.
And they had to punt.
And
then A&M started immediately calling timeouts.
And they went and they scored. With that offense, I'm talking about South Carolina here. Yeah. With that offense that hadn't moved the ball very well.
No offensive line.
Yeah. And they tried to do it, and it bit them in the butt. Yeah.
So I like actually, if you want to go back and break down these individual calls, I'm either like, it could go either way, or I agree with damn near all of them. My only one was that first drive against Bama, where I've always of the philosophy, if you get stuffed on 3rd and 1, you kick it on 4th and 1. Yep. Because, guys, you had your damn shot, you didn't block it. Or our calls aren't working against this front. Whatever you want to do, but you had your shot, we didn't get a yard. That's what does that comedian used to say? That here's your sign. There's your sign. I couldn't run it for a yard on 1. I'm going to take my 3 points and start the game like that. But even had he kicked it, we're kidding ourselves if there's not a lot of fans in the stands that would have been like, you're not going to beat Bama with field goals. You got to get points. So I don't think any of the decisions had been controversial. I think they've been debatable, arguable, because they've all kind of sat on that line.
Right.
I firmly agree with that end of half stuff, and I agreed with it yesterday.
But
there didn't feel like there was a negative side to trying to score. What yard line did they take over at on that one? Was it the 42? Yeah, they took over at the 42 yard line. It was a 2-play draw. It was 1 play.
Yeah.
So you're on the 42 there.
Why not?
And you were set up to get good field position with where they were punting from. So of course you're going to be more aggressive. But That was the bottom line is they coached a game in the first half that was clearly more aggressive than in the past. And look, when you're playing South Carolina, I don't think you go for it against Alabama on 4th and 1 from inside your 30 early in a football game.
Yep.
I don't think you do, but against South Carolina, I think if you do and you don't get that, your defense has an excellent shot at just holding them to a field goal. And over the course of a long game, you feel like you can recover if you don't get that first down. And you take your odds that the odds are we're going to go ahead and get that first down anyway. So, I think all of that stuff goes into it. You have to think about the opponent, your team, how the game's played out to that point, or what are you putting at risk by not getting it, all those things. And I thought being aggressive against this team early on was the right way to go. If they make you pay for it early, then you stop playing that way.
Yep. I 100% agree. So what does this mean moving forward, Billy? Because I never thought South Carolina would mean anything moving forward other than more reps for that offensive line to work out some kinks. Yeah. If they would have won 50-0, I would have been like, that's great. We finally saw some offense, but what does it mean on the road? We were still going to ask that question. Yeah. So, I don't want to say can they split on the road this year, but I think we all know pretty much every game outside of Mississippi State last year, and that game was actually closer than the score indicates, but it is what it is. Outside of that game, it's been a game in the fourth quarter of every loss that they've had. Every loss. So what do they need to do to finish it off next week at Ole Miss?
Well, look, I think first and foremost, your defense is going to have to, have one of those days. Just be disruptive, force some turnovers. We didn't even talk about the defense. You listen to Beamer. You've seen who South Carolina's played, right? They played Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
They've played Tennessee.
It was a closer game than this one.
Yeah, they've played a Tennessee team that we think is pretty salty on the defensive front. And Shane Beamer said that's the best defensive line we've played all year. And he said 45 was incredible.
And he was.
And he was again. And like I told you the other day, I'm not hearing a lot of first, second round chatter for him from the scouts. As much as I watch him play, I think the scouts are behind.
Sure.
I think that will adjust as this thing keeps going. I thought Bryce Anderson was pretty spectacular. Torian York. And by the way, Bryce showed you how much they missed him last week in Knoxville. Yeah. Again, a close game. You don't have him. That hurt. By the way, another guy I'm flip-flopping here, and I thought the defense was – they had a couple of shaky drives there, but they were really good.
Yeah,
they were really good again. They continue to play like one of the best in this conference. I think you go Bama, Georgia A&M. I think this is probably third best defense in the league. I really do.
Which means it's one of the top 10 in the country, top 5.
And it sucks, that you're not getting the ranking and the SEC title contention to show for it, which if you'd have told me the defense was going to be this good, I would have bet a lot of money that this is going to be a special year for A&M. But then if you'd have told me, Wigman was going to go down in the first half of the first conference game, and if you'd have told me that the offensive line wasn't going to be much better, I would have been like, yeah, then unfortunately that's a real concern. And that's what we're seeing. But speaking of offense, one guy that we won't mention a lot this week, I thought Amari Daniels really provided something for them yesterday when they needed it. And they're not special numbers. What were his numbers?
13 carries, 68 yards, a touchdown, a 29-yard long.
Yeah, I mean, I thought he ran tough. He converted a short yardage that they needed. That big run he had.
And he had missed a couple games.
Yeah, and he had the touch. Didn't he have the touchdown? Or was that Reuben? That was him.
Reuben had the 14-yard touchdown.
No, who had the short touchdown?
I think it was Amari.
Yeah, he that was put his head down and got in there. That was third? I think it was third down from the 1 or something. So I was Reuben, most extensive action for him. So good for the developing freshman. He's going to be really damn good. That touchdown run was nice. But I thought Amari came in and he looked like a veteran running back yesterday. He looked like a guy that, with Le'Veon out, they could depend on. I think they need Le'Veon back this week if they want to, I think that's their best offense is to have him as at number 8 as a weapon in that backfield, especially in a game where they're going to need points. And I thought the defense was really good Saturday. I didn't want to go without talking about that. But before we go, what else? Punting. Constantino is struggling badly these last few weeks. They've got to. It's not physical. We've seen his leg. They've got to, somehow fix his. I don't know if it's his process or what it is. How he's hitting that ball. But to me, is it mechanical or is it mental? And I don't know. That's for them to figure out.
It might be both.
It could. Well, I mean, the mental could be causing the mechanical, or the mechanical could be causing the mental. It probably is both. That's an issue right now, especially next week. Against Ole Miss, on the road, you want to win games, and I think what'll happen too is teams will start coming after him. I'd say, okay, he's not punting well. That's going to be in his head. He's going to try to be a little more deliberate with things. Let's come after him. Or even if we don't get to him, you rush a guy that's already struggling, your odds of getting a bad punt go way up. So that's a concern going in there, as are missed field goals. Bond was 3 for 4. I think this one got tipped that he missed, which would have ended the game. You missed that field goal, and I didn't think that the A&M defense was going to give up 2 more touchdowns to South Carolina. They gave up 2 the whole game. I didn't think they were going to go back-to-back. Football's funny like that with momentum, though. And you let a team sit there and hover within 13. Team goes on a 4-minute drive, and the next thing you know, they're on siding or they're kicking off to you with 2.5 minutes left and a couple timeouts, and you have to get a first down. That's the time the offense tightens up.
Yep.
That field goal miss was massive, and he's missed some key field goals this year, and I think it got tipped, but I didn't see a lot of penetration. So I'm wondering if it was a low kick. Whatever it is, the kicking game for A&M has not been up to par by any metric, and so that's something they're going to have to. You're not going to win Saturday. You're not going to win at LSU, leaving points on the board in the red zone, or by not capitalizing. You have to punt it well and win that field position battle, and you have to get 3 when 3 is available. And I was feeling good after that 52-yarder because that was a massive one too. Put you back up, but this, you made 3 of 4, but the 4th one is still makes you go up. We're still doing it with the kicking. Saturday's game, Ole Miss. What does it mean? I think there's a ton to gain.
It changes everything, man.
We say it all the time, David, and I don't think I'm not going to put this as, this is one of the biggest games of Jimbo's tenure.
I did say that on the show yesterday. It could be. Did. I did say it can be. Absolutely.
I think it can be a really significant win. If you lose, I think it just everybody stays in the same mindset, which is, angst and frustration and everybody kind of stuck in this middle. What happens? You could wash out. I said this last week, beat South Carolina. You could wash out a ton. Just shut people up. Send everybody around the country and all these blogs and Twitter and social. You can send them all scurrying in different directions. Loudmouth Barrett Sallee or anybody at The Athletic or, these people that just won't, they're just looking, they're looking to pounce. They're looking to create a narrative. That's not true. A&M's win-loss results are creating the narrative, but just the dog pile that they seem so. Here's my problem with the people I mentioned, by the way. They don't seem so. Look at Josh Pate. Look at Andy Staples. Look at the guys at the SEC Network. like Roman Harper and I were joking. He would say, man, a couple of Aggies have come up and said, why they're friendly, but like, man, why do you hate on the Aggies? So like, I don't hate on them. I just call it like I see it for every team. And that's the truth.
Yep.
Like that's the absolute truth. And a lot of these guys that say this have picked A&M to do well, to win games. And then they'll call it like it is when it's not good. Those are the guys and girls in this industry I respect, are the ones that'll do that. It's the ones that it felt like they've had an agenda.
And we know they
Jimbo and A&M because of the money A&M spent, because of what they did with the state, because of Jimbo at Florida State, whatever dealings they had with him there, all those things, that it was very obvious from day one that they were rooting for this thing to fail. And as members of the national media, shame on you. Like, that goes against everything you pretend to stand for. And I think it's even more damning when you do it from a national megaphone that pretends to be unbiased, because it's a lot more damaging to whatever program it is. Not just A&M. They do that to
sure.
There's agendas. Hey, these coaches are leaking me info from this staff, or Sark's staff does a great job. Lincoln Riley, they're super cool and young, and they talk to us and tell us, like, I've seen them do it with guys that are like GAs that just leak stuff to them, and they promote those guys on up through the ranks for jobs. If I'm one of them coaches, I'd probably do it. Why not? But they've been the opposite with Jimbo. And my point, I went off on that rant, but you could erase all of that and let them go focus on Brisket Riley, who almost lost a cow this weekend. Let them go focus on whoever's next. Go focus on OU and Brent Venables. If they go lose another game this week, they'll find it somewhere else. So if they beat Ole Miss, they could silence so much of that negativity. But more importantly, for that locker room, and you can stop that road losing streak, and people can stop talking about that. You can get payback on Lane Kiffin. But most importantly, Nuño, you could go up to 4-2 in the SEC. You'd be favored to beat Mississippi State at home the next week, and you'd be looking at probably being 5-2 in this league in a year where you lost your starting QB in the first half of the first game. Maybe let Max Johnson get some momentum in this offensive line, start feeling better about themselves, or whatever. Maybe you win it just straight defense. However you do it, I think it really would be one of the bigger wins for Jimbo. I don't think going in, I'm like, this is one of the biggest games. I don't think it
can set that up, though.
Yeah, I don't think it sends you off into a different direction. I think the only way that happens is if you were to somehow win out. That would be a different conversation.
You win against Ole Miss, then win out becomes a real possibility. And by the way, LSU plays Bama. LSU potentially could have 2 losses in the SEC. And you play them to end the season. So a lot of things are still for as woe as me we want to be, and sometimes it is appropriate.
Look, they're a 5-point underdog in Oxford, so it's not, people are not going to be picking A&M to win this game. So it will, we can say, well, it's Ole Miss and it shouldn't be, but it will be an upset. So they'll have to score a mild upset victory over a team that's 7-1.
Yep.
Ole Miss is better defensively than people give them credit for. I don't think they're as high scoring offensively as people want to give them credit for. But they still have a nice dual threat quarterback in Jackson Dart. They still have an exceptional tailback, who I think still one of the couple most talented backs in the league. Last year he was the best. So, and Lane Kiffin, if there's a weakness on your defense, he'll exploit it. But I think this is a huge Saturday for Jimbo, for the A&M program, for DJ Durkin, who what they did last year to A&M on the ground and offensively, and the comments they made about running all over all those 5-star D linemen that Lane Kiffin made, and standing on the logo midfield and taking pictures and stuff, and all of it. Like, this is a big one to me for DJ Durkin and this defense, because Lane Kiffin thinks he wants to get at Durkin for leaving him. He wants to show Durkin up. He hates A&M because Jimbo hired him. And by the way, the guy would crawl to coach here. Everybody knows that. There's a lot of places he would crawl to coach, but Oxford's got him for now. This is your opportunity to go out there and accomplish a lot besides climbing to 4-2 in the league. If you lose this game, everybody's just going to go, yeah, it's same old A&M.
Yep.
Same old Jimbo, same old A&M. That's what they'll say. You have a chance to change that. Saturday, meaning Jimbo, Petrino, Durkin, Adazio, Max Johnson, that offensive line, the defense that's been really good. But I would say, I'm telling you, this defense and that D-line, I think, should be absolutely foaming at the mouth Saturday because of what happened last year at Kyle Field. And I know there's this whole thing of, hey, revenge isn't a thing. My ass.
It's the thing.
Like, I think you should go out there and say, if I'm Shamar Turner, if I'm McKinley Jackson, if I'm Fadil Diggs, any of those defensive linemen, Walter Nolan, I'm wanting to go out there and I'm wanting to get after that Ole Miss offensive line. I'm wanting to embarrass them. I'm wanting to win that war. And honestly, there's not a reason they shouldn't. If I'm Edgerrin Cooper, I want to fly around and be as disruptive as I've been the last few weeks. This is a game that I think this defense should really want, maybe circle it more than any other on the 2023 schedule.
We'll have a lot more tomorrow on TexAgs Radio. Make sure you tune in. Thanks so much for watching the Luchador Podcast presented by Academy Sports and Outdoors.